Have you wanted to try military science fiction, but don't have the time to commit to a 20+ book series? Or maybe don't have the patience to wait for the end of the story until the next book comes out? This video is for you. These are 9 standalone military science fiction books that you should check out, with 2 honorable mentions that are well worth the read. It has to be a main character who is in the military in the future, and it also has to be some character who has gone through a battle of some kind. That's it. I like to go with simplicity definitions. Next is, if you're looking for series, then you should really check out my military science fiction book series video for those ones. Finally, just so you know, not all military science fiction books are pro-war. There are many that have and explore the idea that they don't like war and the ethics and implications and effects it has on the human mind. So be sure to look at reviews and check out the summaries of a lot of these stories, because you might be surprised. Now let's get into this list. Coming in at number 9, we have an oldie but a goodie, Uller Uprising by H. Beam Piper. That's right, this is a lesser known novel, and in case you check it out on Goodreads, this one says it's the beginning of a series, but it's actually a same universe with lots of different characters. So don't feel bad picking this one up and then not picking up the rest. This book opens on the murder of a governor general who has been poisoned in his drink, and he is in charge of the entire Uller company, who has been contracted out by the Terran government to rule this planet. This assassination sets off some events that lead to a planet-wide war. Now, in case this sounds familiar, World War II, you would be right. This book explores a lot of themes and ideas, and it follows multiple characters chapter by chapter as the war unfolds. The casualties climb higher, and everyone is searching for a way to stop the war. However, this book is less about the characters and even less about the story that is all too familiar, but is actually exploring the ideas and ethical implications of dropping an atomic bomb to end the fighting. There is both for and against in this novel, and it seems to all be a thinly veiled attempt to discuss the ethics of atomic war theory. So if that's something that interests you, or if you love some of the events around World War II and the ethics involved, this is the book for you. And coming in at number 8, the book Star Soldiers by Andre Norton. This is an omnibus edition of 2 different novellas that we have placed together because they occur in the same world. The 2 works are Star Guard and Star Rangers. These works are all occurring in a far-flung future where Earth is nothing but a memory, and there is an intergalactic alien government known as Central Control who has decided that humans are too warlike to be allowed interstellar travel unless they are willing to sell out their warlike talents to aliens to fight other wars. Essentially, we become mercenaries of the galaxy. The first story follows a character named Carr who dreams of exploring the stars, and the only way to do so is to join up to become a human mercenary to fight other aliens' wars. However, in the first adventure, he discovers a conspiracy on the planet Fron that may have some very long-lasting consequences. In the second story, we follow a man named Carter, many years in the future, who crash lands on a very unknown planet in the middle of nowhere. While they think they're alone, they begin to discover some human archaeology sites and some ruined cities that date from far, far in the past. And they discover some big events from book one, as well as being able to tie all of their adventures up into a nice little pink bow at the end. This book is very anti-war, in case you're confused or concerned about that, and despite it being two different novellas placed together, these stories really do vibe and riff off of each other, so they should belong in one entire novel. Coming in at number 7, we have a more recent entry, and that is Misfit Soldier by Michael Mamet. This follows Sergeant Gas, who never wanted to be a soldier, but when a con goes wrong, we're better to lay low than the military. He is halfway through a 6-year contract when a fellow squad mate gives him the perfect opportunity to use his ragtag crew to run a con that not only will save his teammate, but might turn the war that they are all fighting. The problem lies that it requires him to be a good soldier. This one was a really fun adventure, doesn't take itself too seriously, and I believe was Michael Mamet's first. In my opinion, of all the Michael Mamet I've read, this is his least good book, and it's definitely reading like a debut, but it is a standalone, and it still was a really fun vibe. So if you're interested in checking out a standalone and you don't want it to be too serious, this is the one for you. Coming in at number 6, we have an essential classic, and that is Armor by John Steakley. This story weaves two different points of view as we see both a soldier and a con artist who are both struggling with their psychological armor against their own personal traumas while an interstellar war rages around them. This book has a lot of fun twists and turns. There is, of course, the very iconic power armor for each individual soldier, and the themes are very on the nose here. I think that it was a fantastic, complex book that is definitely one often compared to Forever War. So if you haven't picked this one up or heard about it, you definitely should. But I gotta be honest, it's a little bit lower on my list because I didn't love the con artist's perspective. He was an unlikable character, and I found myself having to drag myself through his chapters to get to the soldier. That was the fun of the novel for me. Hopefully, you'll have a different experience. Now, before we start on the top 5, we gotta talk about my honorable mentions. These two are fantastic reads. Both of them are ones that I loved, but they didn't quite qualify with the definition. The first honorable mention is gonna be Healer's War by Elizabeth Ann Scarborough. This one follows an army nurse in a war that is very similar to Vietnam, and she is trying to protect her patients, both the indigenous ones and the military, while being stuck behind enemy lines, and also assigned a very racist commanding officer. There is a small amount of fantasy crossover in this, since she may be developing healing powers that are unexplainable, and the reason why it only makes the honorable mentions list is because she doesn't actually personally experience any battles, despite being behind the enemy lines. She is in the military, it is the future, but she's focused on trying to get the soldiers after the fighting happens. So it wasn't quite exactly what a lot of military science fiction fans are going to look for, but it was still a fantastic read if you're not into as much action scenes as maybe some of the other books have. The next and last honorable mention on this list is going to be a book called Embedded by Dan Arbnett. This story follows a journalist who is secretly and illegally embedded into a digital chip inside a soldier's head to witness a future historic battle that will define the future of humanity. However, it gets all more complex when the soldier himself gets injured and knocked into a coma, and the chip version of the journalist is left to try to awkwardly control the soldier's body and imperfectly try to survive for them both without his soldier's instinct or any of the training that the soldier had. This story was incredibly on the edge of my seat, heart beating. It was a fantastic standalone story that really let me experience what a civilian would be like on the military field. However, this story didn't get to qualify for this list because the main character wasn't the soldier, even though he was placed in a soldier's body. So I would highly recommend this one, although I'm sad to say it doesn't technically qualify. So definitely be on the lookout for this one if you're interested. Now let's get into number 5, In the Black by Patrick Tomlinson. This one follows Captain Susan and her team as they investigate missing scout drones that may lead them to a plot that is unusually well done combination of both space opera, intergalactic and military politics, and even mixes in alien perspective. This book packed a lot of punches into a little tiny 350-page book, and while I have to say the ending dragged this book down because it was such a cliffhanger, I don't know if there's going to be any more books in this series or not. It was such a fun ride to check out this world and this alien, to check out the adventures of Captain Susan and her team. It was exactly what I was hoping for in a military science fiction, and really addresses a lot of things like politics that aren't always addressed in a lot of military science fiction. I'm really hoping that this one isn't going to be a standalone for long. This brings us to number 4, which is going to be Rubicon by J.S. Deuce. Another book that I hope won't be a standalone for long. This one follows Sergeant Adrian Valero, who has died 96 times while fighting an unwinnable war against a more advanced alien race. And she's at a point where she doesn't think she wants to wake up the 97th. But she finally gets transferred to a ragtag, mostly covert team that starts doing things a little bit differently and uncovers a secret to the war that may just give humans the advantage for both Adrian herself and all of humanity. But I gotta tell you, the ending of this book was a real doozy. Talk about a hell of a good cliffhanger. I gotta tell you, I personally messaged the author, who didn't respond by the way.
Answer me.
To see if she is coming out with a second book. It's not been announced and technically still counts as a standalone, but I hope by the time you're seeing this that she will write a second book for this, because holy crap, this one was super fun. High recommend, and I hope this one isn't on this list very long. And coming in at number 3, The Light Brigade by Cameron Hurley. Here we follow the recruit Dietz, who joins up a corporate military force just in time for a war with Mars. Trying not to project their troop movements to the enemy, they develop a technology to de-atomize their troops and send them on a band of light to the battlefield on a different planet. But Dietz starts having bad drops and weird memories about what's going on, and she begins to believe that she's losing her mind and going through battle madness. But as the drops continue and things start falling into place in a way that the military doesn't really want her to begin to figure out, things really start getting good. The war is way more complicated than we thought. This book was 10 out of 10, a super good time. I had such a fun time with this character and trying to solve the mystery while trying to survive these battles. I really strongly recommend this one. It is definitely a standalone and is a standout in this list. Coming in at number 2 is a newcomer to this list, and one you may not have expected. All You Need Is Kill by Hiroshi Surazaka. This is the book that inspired the movie Edge of Tomorrow. And if you haven't heard me talk about this book enough, then you need to go read it, okay? This is a translated work, and we still follow our main character who just joined the military and is fighting an unwinnable war in a power suit against aliens who are known as mimics. But he gets killed in battle, fighting for his teammates, but immediately wakes up the next day to repeat the same day, over and over, constantly getting killed, trying to learn the lessons of how he can A, get out of the loop, and B, stop dying. There are so many cool pieces of this story that were not covered in the movie. It was such an incredible tale and definitely made me cry.
He's making me cry.
He continues to live that day over and over again until he meets the Full Metal Bitch named Rita.
That's the Full Metal J Squad.
And she helps him try to figure out how to break out of the cycle and also how to come out ahead in the war. This one was full of a lot of emotion, and let me tell you, if you think you know how it ends, it's not the same as the movie. It's definitely different. I would highly recommend you pick this one up. It really caught all of my heartstrings. This one was such a strong contender on the list. If you haven't picked it up, you really need to.
Then let's do it, soldier!
And that brings us to the number one on the list, which no one is going to be surprised about, and that is going to be Robert Heinlein's Starship Troopers. Come on, you guys. You can't say you're that surprised. So in case you live under a rock, this story follows the main character, Johnny Rico, as he joins the military against his parents' wishes because he doesn't know what to do after high school. And in the middle of his training, he ends up joining just in time for the aliens, known as buggers, to attack.
The only good bug is a dead bug.
Starting our very first interstellar war. However, things aren't always as clean as the military always shows us. This book is full of a lot of moral philosophy and Heinlein's politics. And I gotta tell you, chapter 8 is one of the heaviest hitting chapters that really discusses a lot of that if you're interested in just picking it up for one chapter. One of the things that I liked the most about this story is not necessarily the classics, but the politics that essentially force you to have an opinion. If you think you don't, this book will force you to either agree or disagree with the main character. And I really appreciate that this story makes you think. It is one of the easiest books to start a discussion with people who have read it that I have ever encountered. I think that it is one of the most thoughtful books out there. So even if you disagree with Heinlein's politics, I would highly recommend you read this one just because it is a great discussion starter. So this book had to be in my number one slot just because of how fun it is to talk about. And that does it for my 9 standalone military science fiction books. Are there any books that I should have included on here that are missing, that are standalones? Please let me know in the comments section down below. And as always, come check us out in Discord. And until next time, you guys, see you in my next video.